It's time for the Rock Solid Wrestling Count It Out question.
All right, it's Count It Out question backstage here with Jake O'Reilly, Canadian heavyweight champion, with John Atlas, with Darko. Oh my goodness, Scotty the Body. Hey, with the Canadian Tag Team Champions, the Ring Truck Crew. What's the best wrestling or sports movie ever made?
Sports? Oh, remember the Titans. Let's go. Denzel, we'll go way back.
Love that one. That's tough. I go with, what's the deal now? The Al Pacino football movie?
Oh, Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, that
Good one. That's an excellent choice.
Slapshot.
Best sports movie? Oh, Slapshot.
We get Ready to Rumble. We had the original wrestler that way before your time, Mikey. I think even way before my time. What's another wrestling movie? You got that Wrestling the Shadows. Jeez, what else was there that came out?
Does it have to be wrestling?
No, it could be sports movies. A lot of guys have been saying Slapshot.
I was going to say, remember the Titans.
Oh, I got
that one's been mentioned too.
Because you said that, I got a great one. I'm not even a football fan, but I love that movie, The Program.
Why are you always saying Grunt? Grunt the wrestling movie. That's my pick, man.
This has been the Rock Solid Wrestling Count It Out question. Count It Out with Mike and Tyler is proud to sponsor Rock Solid Wrestling Brace for Impact, Saturday, March the 29th from the Bracebridge and Muskoka Lakes Secondary School. Visit rocksolidpro.ca for details and ticket information.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals. Welcome to another episode of the Bill Apter Seal of Approved Count It Out with Mike and Adam. Yeah, Tyler's not here this week, so Mike gave me a call in a desperate panic to try and get somebody on the show, and I said, well, I think I could squeeze you in. So here I am, Coke Zero Conta, back with you're drinking, what is it? What are you drinking today, Mike? You're not Mojito Mike anymore.
No, I'm not Mojito Mike today. This is a new favorite. I discovered this right before Christmas. Let's see if the camera picks this up. This is, I hope I can still get it. I'm not finding it in stores anymore. This is Crown Royal.
Is it American? Because that would probably be okay, because that might be why.
This is Crown Royal salted caramel.
Tasty, delicious.
And I'm telling you, man, one of the greatest things I ever discovered. You take this, take an ounce or so of this into a cup, and then you add Crown Royal. Also has Crown Royal apple, so you throw in an ounce of that, mix it up a little bit, and you got yourself the most beautiful alcoholic caramel apple you've ever had in your life. It's amazing.
So it looks like we have mixed drink Mike here today instead of Mojito Mike. And Mike, thanks so much for having me on the show today, man. I'm really glad to be here always with Count It Out. We had a great time last weekend.
We sure did.
At Elimination Chamber, and I'm glad to be back with you again.
Now, you guys can hear our full recap. Both Tyler and I had two very different
experiences
days on that Saturday. We had two very different experiences, two very different Saturdays. And we both talked about it last week. You can go back in the archives and check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But Adam, you were right beside me for the majority of the day until we got to our seats, and then you went and sat with Matt, and I sat with my son. Up until that point where we separated, though, what was your experience like that day? How did you feel about Elimination Chamber?
You know, the thing that I think enjoyed most about it was I got a chance to just kick back and be a fan again. You know, it was one of the first shows I've been on in a long time where I wasn't either A, working at the show, or B, on assignment for you guys somehow trying to get interviews with somebody. And those experiences have been few and far between in the last few years for myself. So it was nice to just sit back and be a fan again, to look through the merchandise and see what I would like to get. Clearly I went with the hoodie, and to just talk about the matches like fans, and most importantly, to enjoy the show like fans. So that was what the day was like for me. I just got to, actually just enjoy myself for once instead of having to think about work.
You're not wrong. I think that was the same for me too. I kind of put the podcast to the side. I know Tyler would have liked me to take more videos and better videos because of how good my seating was. But I was just enthralled in the show and with my son and everything. I felt like it was 1998 again, and I was at my very first Skydome show. And that's a special feeling. It's a great thing to have in your 40s. You don't get a lot of these moments in your 40s. So if you can grab one of those in your midlife, grab it and hold on to it, man. Especially if you can add some friends into that. So you and Matt making the trip down that day and spending the day with me and Finn was very special to me. Us perusing Toronto together, going for dinner, having breakfast in the morning. That made the weekend very complete for me. It was very cool to have you and Matt there. After that, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you, man.
Yeah. After that, it's been a week. So what's been going on in the week of professional wrestling? We've gotten a few announcements. Where do you want to start today, man? Do you want to start with the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I think that's kind of the one of the bigger stories, and I think we got a lot to say about the one, potentially two people that have been announced this
Exactly.
week. Let's start for the one that's confirmed for sure.
For
The
sure.
total package, Lex Luger. Now, if you're out and about in the world of professional wrestling online, I think this one wasn't a huge surprise, but I think there was a lot of people, such as myself, that felt like it's long overdue,
Mhm.
and we're very happy to see this announced. I was watching that announcement video that WWE put out with Cody Rhodes,
That was
and I had a
huge.
smile
Me
from
too.
ear to ear watching that, man. It was so nice. I love a good comeback story. I love a good redemption arc. So to see a guy like Lex Luger, and whether or not religion's your thing, it's not my thing, but look, whether or not it's your thing, just the fact that here was a guy who hit rock bottom and was able to pull himself back up and now has a different perspective on life, a more grateful perspective on life. As Chris Van Vliet, a good friend of the show, Chris Van
Mhm.
Vliet would say, an attitude of gratitude. That's a great story, and you love to see it have a happy ending. Although in the case of Luger, it's more of a happy comma,
Yeah.
not so much a happy ending.
And good pull on CVV there because Chris was able to help Lex tell a story not long ago where Lex was a guest on Insight with Chris Van Vliet very recently. I haven't seen the full show yet, but what I've seen is very good, and he tells a lot of very personal stories. I can't wait to finish that up. But seeing the total package in the WWE Hall of Fame just makes sense. Like it doesn't matter when you were a fan of Lex or where you were a fan of Lex. It all makes sense in the end. You may have been a big fan of the Narcissist. Who knows? I'm sure there's fans of the Narcissist out there. I'm sure a lot of people were fans of Made in America Lex Luger. He was being built to be the next Hulk Hogan at the time. He was huge. He was everywhere. People loved Lex Luger. But if you were an old school WCW fan, I'm sure you loved the total package. He was the man going up against all the bad guys for so long. He was the sweetheart of the wrestling world for a very long time. Sting's best friend, a pivotal member of the Wolf Pack. He
No
did a
question, he did a lot, man.
he did a lot for this business, and to see him finally go in, especially everything he's been through since his retirement in wrestling, which has been a very long time. People somewhat forget his very brief run in TNA, but after that, we never saw Lex on TV again. And of course, Lex's health issues, deteriorated. The whole thing with Miss Elizabeth, people kind of, I don't want to say forgot about Lex, but people forgot about Lex. So this is Lex's. I like how you said it before. You like a good comeback story. This is Lex's redemption. This is Lex's comeback story. Lex gets to stand, and I'm not using that ironically because we saw him stand up out of that chair to hog Cody Rhodes. He gets to stand up on that podium and say what he wants to say to the WWE universe, to the wrestling universe, and he deserves that after all these years. I'm
You
very
know, and
happy.
I think that that's a big thing to keep in mind is that it's his redemption story in the world of professional wrestling, but his true redemption, I think, has already happened for him in in the real world, in his life
Yeah.
outside of wrestling. And I think that his story is going to continue. Like, this is going to be a great highlight, but let's be honest, the progress that he's making with DDP and where
Mhm.
that will ultimately end up is going to be the real success story for the total package. And I'm sure everybody here at Canada Out and everybody listening is all pulling for Lex. And we hope that, he does really well and is able to once again, walk without his any assistance whatsoever one day. All I know is this. We've seen Diamond Dallas Page create miracles for guys that we thought were on death's door, guys that we thought would never walk again. The man is a modern day miracle
He
worker.
is.
And if there's anybody who can motivate guys to reach levels they never thought possible, it's DDP. With his will and Lex Luger's determination, man, we're going to see Lex walking without a wheelchair on his own permanently. That I truly believe. I
I
truly
do too.
believe that.
I do as well.
Um, while we're on the topic, let's talk about Lex a little bit. Like, do you have any particular memories that stand out, or do you remember the first time you saw Lex Luger? How were you first exposed to the total package?
The first time I saw Lex Luger is probably just prior to like WrestleMania 9.
Okay. So his WWF run was like what
Yes.
you were
I
first exposed to.
I was not really exposed to WCW a whole lot as a child. There was a
Well, I
lot
mean,
of
we didn't really get access to it up here in
exactly.
Canada unless you had cable, unless you had
I
TBS.
I probably knew of Lex Luger because I was obsessed with the PWI almanacs.
Hmm.
My uncle used to give me the PWI almanac every year for my birthday, and so I had been reading that almanac since 1989, possibly.
Yeah.
So I probably knew of Lex, but I don't think I was physically introduced to Lex. I didn't see him wrestle until probably what would have been 1993 when
Yeah, I
the
believe he came to the Federation as a wrestler
yeah
in
when
1993.
how would Heenan call him Narcissus
Well, I
when
think that was the original name, and I
I
think they
think
just
it was
changed it
yes
to the
I just
Narcissist.
it's one of my favorite promos that Heenan throws. He's trying so hard to build to this wrestler he's bringing into the company, and he must say the word Narcissus 6 times in this promo at least, and we never do see Narcissus ever. I love it. But to have the Narcissus Lex Luger, I'm pretty sure that was my introduction to him. Was probably on a throwaway superstars or something like that prior to WrestleMania 9. Or
Yeah,
not prior. Yeah, prior.
yeah, the same for me, man. I was first exposed to Lex during his WWF run, and of course, the most memorable part of it for me was SummerSlam
Of
1993.
course.
I have espoused my affection for that maligned pay-per-view so many times on this show, and I still stand by it. That is
I,
one of the hills I will die on, that
I don't blame
SummerSlam
you.
93 is way better than people give it credit for. I must have rewound and watched the I'll Be Your Hero music video probably at least 60 or 70 times as a
Yeah.
kid. I loved that whole music video. Uh, when I got the WWF Anthology album, the song that I was most excited to have on that disc track was the I'll Be Your Hero song. And Lex Luger was a hero for a lot of
Of
people
course he
watching,
was.
Obviously, it was hard for me to relate to him as an all-American hero
Mhm.
because being Canadian, Bret Hart was more my guy. But, you know, there's no question about it that Luger had a huge impact on the WWF audience. And even then, when he switched over to WCW, it was easy to follow him there and check out what he was doing.
Mhm.
And, look, I think it's easy to remember him as a hero for the Lex Express.
Sure.
And I think obviously we can't forget about his big championship title win over Hulk Hogan on
Yeah,
Nitro.
exactly.
I would think that's probably the biggest win of his career. But I also want to give some props to him as a heel, as a bad guy, because
Okay.
his run as the US champion in the late 80s, early 90s in
Mhm.
WCW was fantastic. I think that might have been the best run of his entire career. I loved watching Lex Luger matches from that time frame. And as a heel with the Four Horsemen, or even as a babyface against them, I think he was
That
tremendous at that time. And that's, I think, why people looked at him and said, that guy's a future superstar. He's a future Hall of Famer because the potential was right there in front of us on display.
that was my next question before we go on to the next subject. My next question for you was going to be, how did you feel about Lex Luger as a horseman? Where does he rank up with the horseman?
I think that I think it was a good choice. I
Mhm.
think there are a lot of guys you could put in
He
there.
looks the part, I'll give him that.
100%.
Yeah.
He was what I would consider a junior horseman. He was a guy that was brought into the group with potential, right? We're going to take this guy and we're going to mold him. He's not quite there yet, but he's got all the potential in the world to become a horseman. So there are a few guys like that. I feel like Barry Windham was one of those guys, although I think that he graduated from junior member to
Yes.
full member incredibly quickly.
Out of all the so-called junior members, I think Barry's the one that solidified himself as a real horseman real quick.
Luger was a junior member. I would have considered Benoit a junior member when he first joined
Yeah.
in.
Malenko as
Um,
well.
I would consider Paul Roma to be one of those junior members, a guy that they thought could come in with a little bit of potential. Um, some of those guys worked out for, some of them not so much.
Yeah.
Luger's time with the Four Horsemen was brief, so I don't necessarily think that he kind of reached that full-fledged status, but I thought he was a great fit for the group at the time. I think it made all the sense in the world. And as we oftentimes see, the guy just got so over and became
Yeah.
so popular with the fans that they're like, well, can't be a horseman anymore. He's too damn over with the people.
Exactly. Now, only a couple days before the official announcement that Lex Luger was in the Hall of Fame, there was another announcement made, but it wasn't made by the WWE. It was
No.
made by the inductee himself, Fred Ottman. Yes, Danny, I said Fred Ottman. Typhoon, Tugboat, Shockmaster, whatever you want to call him,
Uncle Fred.
Uncle Fred. He announced himself that he and the late John Tenta, Earthquake, were going in to the Hall of Fame as the natural disasters. Now, this got fans riled up in two very different ways. Myself, I was a huge fan of the disasters when I was a young kid. I'm also a huge fan of John Tenta. I think you want to talk about the great Canadians that became wrestlers. I don't think we talk about Earthquake enough.
Absolutely not. Completely underrated superstar and absolutely should be talked about more.
Look how much of a monster he looked in his matches with Hogan back in the day. Like these things go right over people's heads. The stuff he did with Jake Roberts, just amazing stuff. And I'm not taking anything away from Fred, but John, to me, Tenta was, what a heel, what a massive man. So you put these two guys together, and you got this great tag team, amazing tag team. I was a big fan, so I was excited. Unfortunately, a lot of fans that were expecting a very different tag team to get announced that week. Maybe, I'm not going to say they disrespected the natural disasters, but I think they wanted Demolition just a little bit more. So a lot of people were kind of going, okay, I get it. We like the disasters, but it should be Demolition. Well, there's still lots of time. And I know Axe is kind of getting up there in age. So maybe I agree that maybe this should be Demolition's year. But here's the thing. WWE hasn't confirmed either. WWE has yet to confirm Demolition. They haven't done one of those videos that they did for the first three. They haven't talked about them. They just put out a press statement yesterday about the Hall of Fame and did not mention the natural disasters. I don't know what this means. Does this mean that Mr. Ottman jumped the gun? He was told about it by WWE and wasn't supposed to say anything yet. Does it mean that he was told by the wrong person? Maybe somebody fed him bullshit. Maybe it was somebody like Dave Meltzer or somebody heard it and they told Fred and Fred took it as gospel. We won't know until we know, if we know. I'm hoping, because Mr. Ottman's expecting it, I'm hoping it happens, because I would feel horrible that he doesn't get his due. But I will say this, and this is purely out of respect for Fred Ottman. Our mutual friend Ray brought up a very good point to me. He says, Of course, the Shockmaster would watch his own Hall of Fame entry.
Well, I hope so too. I hope that it is an actual legitimate thing that has been planned out and will happen because the natural disasters do deserve to go in. They deserve their flowers. Unfortunately, one half of them will not be with us when that does happen, but at the very least, we can honor one of them. And they are an underrated tag team that I think was able to play both sides really well. They were great, big, lovable baby faces when they finally kicked Jimmy Hart to the curb,
Yeah.
and they were fearsome as a heel tandem. So I think there's enough memories there and enough goodwill. Former tag team champions as well. Yeah, give those guys their flowers, man. And look, to
100%.
everyone out there that was expecting demolition or hoping for demolition, cool, awesome. Guess what? Now you got somebody to look forward to next year as well.
Exactly.
As to your comment about the press release, I mean, look, they've only announced officially 3 people so far.
Mm-hmm.
Triple H, Michelle McCool, and Lex Luger. And 3 people a Hall of Fame ceremony do not make, unless you're TNA, in which case one person can make a Hall of Fame ceremony, but whole different story there. So be patient. I'm sure that the natural disasters announcement will be forthcoming. And who knows? Maybe we will get some more before then. We still have weeks to go before WrestleMania season or before WrestleMania weekend. So we got lots of time. But hey, Mike, speaking of WrestleMania weekend,
here we go.
Very interesting competitor who will be at WrestleMania weekend, but not so far scheduled for any WWE appearances.
Well, this person doesn't work for WWE then, does she?
Oh, no, she does work for WWE.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, somebody who works for WWE and is a close personal friend of the show, a very recent guest on your show, although also unexpected. We're talking about Miss Natalia Neidhart. She is going to be featured on the GCW Bloodsport show during WrestleMania weekend. And it was also announced that later on, she's going to be competing in the NWA as part of the Crockett Cup event.
Yeah.
Man, you want to talk, look, I said it at Elimination Chamber weekend. You shouted it out for me on the show, and I appreciate it. Big swings from WWE this year, man, and doing things that we didn't think we'd ever see. Certainly not under the Vince regime. The Triple H era is really taking the WWE into some interesting places. Agreed. To be sure. Now, I also want to start off by saying, look, we know this isn't like groundbreaking in the sense that, yes, Shayna Baszler was at Bloodsport last year. We know that. But I think as fans, especially older fans like you and I, who have grown up with Vince McMahon as the only head honcho as part of the WWE, this kind of stuff is still shocking to us. It's still jarring for us to see WWE talent get contracted elsewhere because it just did not happen up until a few years ago.
Now, I think it's safe to say I want to do a little bit of armchair booking here with you.
Sure.
We don't know what she will be doing at either event. Let's start with Bloodsport. At Bloodsport, she could basically go up against almost anybody in the entire professional wrestling world, except I would say an AEW signed person. The reason I say that, not because they wouldn't let that person go to GCW for a show. I think they would, and they have. I just don't think that WWE and AEW could agree on 2 of their competitors facing each other.
I mean, at this point, I'm willing to believe anything's going to happen, man,
I just don't think it'll happen.
No, is it unlikely? Yes, but also last weekend, I also believe that John Cena was going to be a heel until the day, or a face until the day he died. So at this point, man, up is down, black is white. As Weird Al once said, everything you know is wrong.
So do you have a prediction or even selfish wish of who we could see Natalia Neidhart face up against either one of these events? Let's start with GCW. Bloodsport.
So, prediction, accurate prediction? No. Selfish wish, absolutely. Maki Ito, because Maki Ito is one of the most entertaining women's wrestlers in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And, Natalia's a wrestler, absolutely, but she's also a really entertaining performer. And I think that the 2 of them could really have a nice blended mix of wrestling and entertainment against one another. So, You hate me all you want, Bloodsport fans. Those of you that are like, no, no, she's a grappler. We got to put her in there and go dungeon style. I get it. I get it. But you asked what I wanted. And my selfish wish is that she and Maki Ito have a sing off and then maybe do 2 or 3 wrestling moves. And that's the match.
I agree that a lot of fans are going to expect her to go in there as a grappler. But here's the thing. Yes, she can be a grappler. Natalia Neidhart is everything. And that's why she's probably the most well-rounded, greatest women's performer in the history of that company. And I stand by that. She can do it all. She can wrestle against anybody you put her up. I've got 2 names, prediction and also sort of selfish wish, but prediction more than anything. I think we're going to see a little bit more of her violent side. This is Bloodsport after all. So we're going to go up and see her get a little nasty. And I think it's going to be against Masha Slamovich.
I mean, it's a dream match to be sure, right? It's a dream match to be sure.
For my selfish pick.
So wait a minute, this isn't the same?
No.
Okay,
that's my prediction.
That shocks me, man, because I know what a huge mark you are for Masha Slamovich.
I love Masha, but the reason I do think that this is going to happen, so I decided to pick something else for my selfish pick.
What I'm hearing is you're gaming the system. You're just saying like, look, no matter what happens, I'm the winner here.
My selfish pick would be 2 Canadian girls just beating the shit out of each other in the middle of that ring. I want to see me some Jody Threat, baby. Natty
Not bad.
Jody Threat, and we know they know each other. They've been Jody's been to the dungeon. They've helped train people together. I want to see what they can do against each other.
Yeah, man. I think both of those choices would be excellent. So, yeah, guys, if you're listening, take Mike's offer there. Book one of those 2 matches.
That's Bloodsport. What we see at NWA at the Crockett Cup, I have no idea. I've been out of the NWA for the last 2 years. Other than we discussed this a little bit off the air, other than Max the Impaler, I don't know a lot of their women's roster. The people who I did follow are either gone or I just found out aren't there. People like would I have loved Natalia versus Camille? Of course. But the Brickhouse is now in AEW. I would have, just from a selfish standpoint, it would be nice to see her go against local girl Terra Rising. But when I asked you to check their roster, she wasn't on there. So I'm not exactly sure what we'll see at NWA.
I mean,
but
I think
good for them. This is a get for NWA. This does more for NWA than it does for WWE. And the only thing I can think is Natty's being set there as a scout.
I mean, that could be it. I could definitely see Natty and Kenzie Page having a showdown. She's the current NWA Women's World Champion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, if I'm Billy Corgan, I'm making a deal with Triple H and I'm saying, hey, let me put the belt on her. How cool would it be to have Natalia Neidhart win the NWA Women's World Championship? Like, look, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, but she's not really doing anything in WWE at the moment.
She's not.
So why not make her an international ambassador, right?
I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea. That's fantastic. Yeah.
The other thing to consider too is that, there are some women, and one woman in particular, this is a bit of a long shot, but that might re-sign with the NWA or at least go back there for a visit. And I'm wondering if maybe we could see legit Layla Hirsch show up back in the NWA where she was before she came to AEW and have her take on Natalia. That could be an interesting matchup. They're both kind of similar builds and backgrounds.
Yeah.
I'd pay to see that.
Didn't she literally just leave AEW like just a week or 2 ago as well?
She did. And the Crockett Cup isn't for a little bit. So we've got time for her to come back and say, hey, I'm back, baby.
I've always been a fan of Layla.
Me too.
I'm a big fan of hers.
And I became a fan of hers in the NWA.
I love that. Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to do before I start setting up our list for these people?
Now, you know me, and I take a long time with these lists, so let's just get right into it so I don't put us way over time as usual.
So I have this list that I've been working on for a very, very, very long time, and it's always just stayed in the back burner because I wanted it to be used when it was topical. Well, I think it's topical now when we just witnessed, I'm going to say it, the biggest heel turn in WWE history. You know, there is an argument to be made about Hogan in '96, but that wasn't WWE. So I can still stand where I'm standing.
Should we clarify that with biggest successful heel turn? Because I think people would state that maybe Steve Austin would have been
I guess so.
comparable, but it really
Sure.
wasn't very successful.
No. Um,
But maybe time's going to tell him this one.
I
Maybe
no, you,
for
you know
all we
what?
know,
Okay,
he could
so
come out
let
next
me
week and get cheered like crazy.
let
I
me
doubt it, but we'll see.
let me change my wording then. The most shocking. I still think this was more shocking than WrestleMania 17.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Just because it's been 22 years since his last turn. Like
Yep.
it's been a long time. Even the
Hey.
people who say they called it, you still didn't really believe it. Come on.
I'm
now.
just playing devil's advocate, man. I'm just playing devil on the shoulder. I'm not saying I disagree with you. Because if we look at the from a pure statistics standpoint, like you mentioned, Cena's reign as a babyface was longer than Steve Austin's,
Mhm.
longer than Hulk Hogan's,
Mhm.
not to mention,
Probably combined.
right, not to
Yeah.
mention to do it at a time when you're saying goodbye on your retirement tour compared to someone like Hulk Hogan, who was already getting booed out of buildings
Exactly.
in WCW.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to diminish those turns. They were huge turns. And look, yes, in terms of impact on the business, we won't know until this is all said and done, right? Clearly, I think Hogan's got the upper hand there because without his heel turn, the NWO would not have been as big of a deal as it was. There's no question. But we haven't given it the time yet to see what the kind of effect this has on the wrestling pop culture landscape. So, yeah, I'm not afraid to make it an early call and say that it's probably the biggest heel turn of a generation, to be sure.
Now, once this heel turn happened, I think everybody started asking the same question: what kind of heel is this man going to be? Where will his heeldom stand in the test of time? Will he be known as one of the greatest heels in the very short period of time that he has to work on his heel craft? Time will only tell. But what I can talk about is 7 people who made my list for the greatest heels of all time.
Now, are we going to have to start off with some criterion here? Tell us, what kind of prerequisites were you looking at here for eligibility?
Heat is obviously a factor. If
I think it's got to be the most important factor.
100%. If you walk in that building and people just want you out of that building right away, that's a thing. People want to boo you. You make people want to just throw things at you and boo you until you leave that building. That's obviously number one criteria for me. Despicability is something that came to play in this. Who were like what the kind of people you look at him like he's a bad fucking person. Like I get he's an actor, but I want to jump at my screen and punch that guy because he's doing horrible things, like just despicable things. So the writing obviously has a lot to do with it. How much of a dick was that character written, and how much do you hate him because of his despicable actions, be it in promos, be it in backstage segments, be it in the ring? Those are my biggest criteria is right there.
All right, well, let's get it started, man. I'd like to hear who is was it the best of the worst?
The best
I
of the
guess
worst. That's the best way to put it.
Because
The
number
worst
one
way
would
to
be
put it?
because number one would be the
Oh.
worst of the worst.
I mention this. I am only talking about wrestlers today. I have omitted people like Bobby Heenan or Paul Heyman or Jimmy Cornette. Number
Okay.
one, I think this.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes,
So
yes,
these are the top 7 heel wrestlers.
I think that's a whole different list, and I think that makes this list so much harder, so much harder.
Yes.
So and this is in wrestling in general. This is not just a WWE list. So if I talk about some people like, his heel run in WWE was meh, well, go look at other companies, and maybe that's why I'm talking about this person.
Fair.
We're just as usual, number 7 is always the hardest thing in the list. I went back and forth with number 7 a lot with about 25 different people because there are far more than 7 great heels in the history of professional wrestling. But I landed on these 7 and I landed on this number 7. And I think I have to stick by it. And I think I feel good about it. We're starting off with one of the most just dastardly, despicable people that we've ever seen in a WWE ring. He really was an opportunist at heart. We're talking about the rated R superstar, Edge.
It's funny because when I was thinking of this list off the top of my head, Edge is a name that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure if I would put him on my top 7, but look, this is a list where you could literally make it hundreds of names long and it still will not have everybody that's required on here.
Right.
So the only thing I'm going to call you out on is if there's anybody that I really think doesn't deserve to be mentioned on the list, not necessarily your top 7. But yeah, man, this guy was a great heat getter. He knew how to rile fans up, and the stuff that he would do to like keep himself on top, it drove fans nuts. I think this is a great pick. Why did you go with Edge in the spot that you did?
Edge, just I always keep going back to Edge when I'm thinking of heels. What are some of my favorite heel moments? And just going back to his original cash in of the Money in the Bank. What a heel moment that was, because we didn't know that you could do that yet. Everybody who's done that afterwards is just expected. It was a heel thing to do then because we didn't know you could do that. We just watched a man fight for 60 minutes inside a giant cage against 5 other men. He should be done. And you're coming and taking advantage of him? Boo. Like, that was horrible. And it's the first time we ever saw it. So that gives him a bit of an edge when it comes to that. But also just the things he did under that rated R gimmick, especially once he got with Lita and they just kind of were allowed to fly. He was horrible. He was just a piece of shit. And people booed him out of the building every week. The stuff he did with Vicky Guerrero was sickening. He was such an asshole to her, and we loved it. We loved every minute of it. We loved booing him every minute of it. Even when he comes to a city like Montreal, I'll never forget sitting in the crowd during a Raw taping in Montreal. It was the night after Unforgiven, and he had just lost to John Cena, and he comes into Montreal, and people are cheering the hell out of him. Well, what does a good heel do? He's got to turn that crowd back, right? And he comes out and he says, listen, thank you so much. And I know you guys want me to get my rematch here tonight. And I'm going to. But not here. Because I want to do it in Canada. Not Canada's retarded cousin, Quebec. Turn that crowd right back over on him. We booed him for the rest of the night. Edge is smart. He knows how to do it. The best heels in the world are smart as hell. And while I'm saying that, I'm realizing I forgot a guy that could go in this spot, and I hate myself for it. But it's too late. We'll talk about it in the honorable mentions.
Well, while you remorse that, I'll share my Edge moment, my Edge heel moment that made me hate him a little bit, and that was his nuptials to Lita when they were getting married and they were saying their vows. And suddenly Matt Hardy's music hit. At the time, I was completely engrossed in that storyline. I was a huge Matt Hardy fan. And to tease me with the possibility that Matt Hardy was back, only to have him, of course, tease everybody or to reveal to everyone it was just a big old fake out. Oh, it had me seething. Me seething.
You were legit angry. I remember that. Because I was talking to you on the old school, I don't know if it was MSN or ICQ. It was one of those old chat programs. And you typed to me, I'm never watching WWF again.
They got me. They got me. So there's proof right there that, Edge was capable of making me for sure unbelievably angry and wanting to see someone kick his ass. So that's all the criteria you need.
Oh, I'm so angry at myself right now because honestly, I don't think Edge makes my list.
So are you putting yourself at number 1 now? Are you the biggest heel?
where I'm a heel in my own world. I'm very upset with
Okay.
myself. We'll talk about this in the
Do you
honorable
want to talk
mentions.
about it now? Tyler's not here. We can break all the rules. Come on, let's do it now. Let's do a
Okay,
redux.
let's do it now. I
Pull a
just don't
swerve.
know. I just don't know because he wouldn't be my number 7.
Okay, well
I,
then
I
you tell.
I
Okay, so you
think
wait. You're saying he might be somewhere else on the list?
yeah, the guy I forgot, the guy I
Okay.
can't believe I forgot is probably my number 4,
Okay, well then let's wait till we get to number
or
4.
5.
Let's wait till we get to number 4.
Okay. Oh, fuck, I'm mad. All right, continuing on.
Not as mad as Tyler. He's sitting here listening to this, going like, "Oh, they're messing with the format. How I'm never letting that guy on the air. Well, I'm never
No.
listening to this podcast again.
It's
I'm
Rob.
Edge in this situation. I'm Edge, and Tyler is me.
It's Rob who's mad right now because I know he's calling me a cheater for putting an extra person on the list.
Hey, man, we're healing on everybody today. The
You know
heel
what?
is the
You know what?
topic.
There it is. Because I know Rob hates it when I do this. Number 4 is a tie. There we go.
No,
I'm having 2 people at number 4. I'm doing a tie. Rob hates it when I do ties. He calls it cheating. There we go. There's my heel turn.
This episode is oops all heels. That's what we're doing. Even the hosts.
Now, you want to talk about heels? You know what the biggest heel is for me right now? Is that everybody else who made a top heel list and didn't put this man on it.
Oh,
I saw my number 6. I mean, I saw several lists up to like the 50 greatest heels ever, and my number 6 wasn't even on the top 50. And they're wrong. They're wrong. This man was a tremendous heel in WWE. This man was a tremendous heel, a phenomenal heel in TNA. This man was the heel in ECW. And he's a heel in real life. If you listen to Busted Open Radio, or you watch the new LFG TV show on A&E. Bubba Ray Dudley is one of the top 7 greatest heels of all time, and I stand by that.
I can't argue that, man. He didn't make my short list over here of guys that immediately came to mind, but as soon as you mentioned him, yeah, I can't argue with that. Bubba Ray is a heat magnet, baby.
Right.
Look, and let's be honest, like the guy has incited near riots.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, you want to talk about heat
You
that
want
you
to talk about
haven't
heat?
seen in decades, man. Yeah, I think that's a great pick for
He
best
meets-
heels.
He meets all the criteria. He gets the heat. He knows how to get the heat, and he still does. He doesn't even have to do the things that he did back in ECW. He doesn't have to call out women for teaching their daughters how to give blowjobs.
I mean, he does.
But he doesn't have to. I'm one of those rare dudes who actually thinks the Aces and Eights was a pretty cool fucking story. And he was
Don't ask
awesome
me.
at
I'm TNA biased. You can't ask me.
and he was awesome throughout that. Just the stuff he's done in the last couple of years in TNA. Some of the shows that you and I have attended, he has done some dastardly shit to guys like Marty McSorley. You know what I mean? And to Scotty D'Amore himself.
I'll never forgive him for throwing Johnny
horrible.
Swinger out of the ECW reunion.
He's a horrible person. And the thing is, I don't know. The man is so wrapped up in kayfabe that I don't know if he's just a piece of shit in real life or not. Because I don't know, is he working us on Busted Open? Is he working us on that LFG show? Because even on LFG, when he refuses to shake that one kid's hand, I want to jump in and slap him. I'm like, what's wrong with you, asshole? But I'm like, is he working me here? I don't know. I legit do not know. And I think that makes him one of the greatest heels ever.
What is your favorite Bully Ray heel moment? While you think about that, I'm going to tell you a little story.
Hard.
Back years ago, TNA was running a gut check tournament, and they were trying to get independent wrestlers to submit their information, and they ran an online tournament where the fans would vote on who would get the opportunity. And there was an independent wrestler that I happened to know, I'd worked with them, who was doing pretty well. And for whatever reason, and I don't know who started it, but he got into it with Bully Ray. And Bully Ray just trashed him, like to the Stone Age, trashed him. And I'd never seen such a like it was almost criminal. Like I felt like I had to call the cops against Bully Ray because of how vicious he was just online to this guy. And it's like, why? As far as I know, they'd never met before. Like there was no reason for him to be this mean, but he was
Yeah.
just mean. And again, like you said, I don't know if that's really him or not, but I'm here retelling the story. I
Yeah,
remembered
yeah,
it. So I mean, at the end of the day, when you get people to remember you, that's what it's all about, man. So yeah, that's honestly, even though it's not a on television moment, that's maybe my favorite Bully Ray heel moment when he healed on an independent wrestler from Canada
yeah.
just
can, can,
because.
can you are you purposely not putting out the name of the worker, or
Yeah,
can you
because
share
I
that with
I
us,
worked
or
I worked with them, but I don't feel I was close enough to them
Mm,
to tell an embarrassing story about them on the air and
understood?
look, I'm not a full heel. Okay. I guess I'm not a true heel.
I don't know what my number one moment for him would be. The ones that come to mind first are, of course, like when he beat the shit out of Devon in TNA, when he was revealed as the leader of Aces and Eights. Those moments come to my head right away. Um, some of the stuff he did with Josh Alexander
Yeah, that's
was,
got to be a contender.
oh my god, that was some sick stuff he did there.
I mean, how about power bombing a geriatric woman through a table?
You have to talk about that, right? Of course.
Pretty
What a
despicable stuff, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, people like to say that WWE watered down the Dudleys a little bit, but they had some great moments there too. Come on. Yeah,
100%.
they weren't allowed to do what they did in ECW, but they were still a horrible tag team, and I mean that
They still
in
managed
a
to
different
push the
way.
envelope as heels in the WWE,
Yeah,
and they owned it. I think that's one of the things that make them such a great team and why Bully Ray deserves a spot on this list is they owned their actions. They
right.
owned all that stuff and they weren't afraid to be heels, real heels.
Now, if John Cena arguably is probably the biggest babyface in the history of WWE, second maybe only to Hulk Hogan, but I'm willing to say that it's probably John Cena. If you have the biggest babyface of all time, you need some amazing heels. You really do. And he got that in the form of one of his biggest rivals, I believe, in my number five. And that's a man that nobody could cheer for. His own mother wouldn't cheer for him if she was in the front row. And
If
that's
you say,
John Bradshaw Layfield.
I thought you were going to say Kevin Federline for a minute there.
I truly do believe that JBL is one of the greatest and most underrated heels in the history of professional wrestling.
Another guy that didn't immediately come to mind, but I can't deny when you say that that name. Yeah,
I'm
dude, Heat
I'm so
Magnet.
interested to see the people that you jotted down, because my 5, 6, 7 didn't make your list, so it's gonna be very interesting.
It will, but again, I'm not mad. That's the thing. You can make again. It's such a topic with such a wide berth that you're
Mhm.
not going to be able to fit everybody in there. And there's going to be people that go, oh, what about yeah? What about What about yeah? And guess what? You're all right. You're all correct, man.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you could do this list 6 or 7 times and come up with 6 or 7 different top sevens.
100%.
Um, it's like I said, it's really only going to be one of these things where if you say somebody and I'm like, no, absolutely not a heel, doesn't count.
I
Um,
I think
but I can't.
my number ones and number twos are solidified. You could, no matter how many times you do this list, they never change. But you could put anybody else in 3 to 7, and you have a list. You really do.
Um, yeah, Bradshaw, man, what a great transformation
Yeah.
from the like
What a
tough
career
guy.
saver for him.
100%. Well, I disagree with that statement.
You, you,
I
you don't think he would have just faded away if he was still
no,
doing the beer
ab-
swiggling?
absolutely not, because
Okay.
the WWE always has room for a tough guy babyface. It's a character that the audience loves,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that they would have continued to support him
But do
if
you
he was
think?
in that role.
But do you think he would have got the push he got? He would have been the in the position he got. Would he have been WWE champion for a year?
Absolutely not.
No.
That's why I say not a career saver, but a
Right.
wonderful evolution
Yeah.
for John Bradshaw Layfield. What a great step up for JBL, and proof that sometimes something as simple and foundational as a heel or face turn can make all the difference in a career, can take you from a great tag team wrestler to a Hall of Fame single star,
100%.
which he is. JBL is one of the great heel champions of all time. There's no question about it. And I
Absolutely.
think we're overlooking a fact here, something that also makes a great heel that we haven't mentioned yet, but I think JBL did exceptionally well, which is make babyface stars. Get baby faces
And
over.
he understood that better than almost anybody.
Unquestionably, JBL was old school as it got, and he understood that his job as a heel was, yes, to make people hate him, but even more than that, make people love his opponents and make sure that by the time they were finished, even if JBL won,
Yeah.
that the guys he wrestled came out bigger stars.
Now
And JBL did that all the time.
there were times where, you know, it was really tough for Cena. Cena had a hard time getting that crowd to cheer for him. But during his feud with JBL, it wasn't as tough. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. And
I truly believe that JBL was John's greatest opponent.
I think there's some debate there, but I think he's
Yeah,
absolutely a
there
top
definitely
10
is some
guy
debate, but he's in the conversation for sure.
without question. They certainly had incredible chemistry, and I think it's because they both had a very similar understanding of their roles.
Mhm.
They got each other and they clicked really, really well. So I'm going to ask the same thing here now. Do you have a favorite JBL heel moment or something that stands out from you as particularly you could point to and be like, that's a great example of what a good heel does?
I mean, he was Elon Musk before Elon Musk was Elon Musk. We can say that.
Right. I think JBL a little less evil.
I'm just saying, doing the Nazi salute, and remember he did that in Germany and got like
Yeah,
kicked
I
out. And,
remember that
yeah,
now. Yes, now that you mention it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not always. Okay, so we can say not always the smartest move, but he would always do his best to get that heat at all costs, I guess.
I loved the little stint he did where he was wearing the the fucking neck brace and the halo, but he still had his hat on top. That stuff cracked me up in the right way. I'm going to announce later on in the show who our guest is next week. But we discussed with that guest humor in wrestling and how can you still be taken seriously as a heel if you're using humor. And JBL is one guy who got away with it. He could do stuff like that. He could wear that ridiculous halo on his neck and the hat on top, and people still took him seriously as a threat in the ring. I think that makes him not just one of the greatest heels, that makes him one of the greatest performers of all time. He understood professional wrestling more than a lot of his colleagues, I think.
I think for me, it's got to be the heart attack with Mama Guerrero. Like pulling Eddie Guerrero's mother into the ring and doing that whole spiel. I mean, man,
Him and
you
Eddie.
can't buy heat. You can't
You
buy
want to
heat
talk
like
about
that.
you want to talk about him and Cena, him and Eddie, the chemistry that they had
Yeah, man.
was second to none.
I could watch those two fight forever,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah, just incredible stuff. All right, man, you're on a roll. I thought that there might be a little bit more friction on this one, but and look, don't get me wrong. Like again, because again, you could put so many people in here. You've already upset. I'm gonna guess at least 2/3 of the
Oh,
audience for sure.
I'm sure. And
But
that's
let's
fine.
keep the heat train rolling here and see what you got at number 4. These are your
And
ties.
This is my tie.
These are your
This is
tie,
my tie.
right?
So 4A, the man
Okay.
who was always slated at
On the
number
list.
4 is just one of the greatest of all time in general. He just happened to be a dick through 90% of it. That's the great Ric Flair.
Of course, Ric Flair was one of the first names I thought of. I'm actually surprised he is this low on the list. I actually thought you would put him higher. So now I am curious to see who you would put in those spots above the Nature Boy. So, of course, there's so many moments to mention here, but obviously, the thing that made Ric Flair such a great heel, I think, for so many throughout his career was the fact that he was the kind of guy who would say things and behave in a way
Yeah.
that made you want to punch him in that big banana nose of his.
That's why, like, don't even bother coming at me with what his greatest heel moment is, because his greatest heel moment is just his career being Ric Flair. To the day he dies, that man is a heel. That man lives the gimmick. All right. He even when he was a face in WCW, you didn't buy him as a face. You were just waiting for that turn because he's such a natural heel. Nobody did it better when it came to that rich boy gimmick. He lived that, and we've seen it duplicated and replicated so many times since, but nobody did it like Rick did. Nobody you nobody made you believe it like Rick, because Rick believed it. Rick wasn't a millionaire back in the 1980s. He wasn't, but he made you believe he was, and he
Well,
acted like he was. He didn't have the money, but he spent it like he did.
and speaking of spending money, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why Ric Flair belongs on this list is that he had the ability to talk people into the arena. And by that, I mean, he would cut a promo and people would say, God damn it, I'm going to pay my money to go and hope that Dusty Rhodes or Magnum TA
That's
or
it.
Ricky Steamboat will kick his ass. And, not a lot of guys can do that. But Ric Flair sure damn could. Ric Flair made a career out of that.
Mhm.
Like when you talk about having a heel world champion. Your top guy, when your top guy is a heel, the key to having a top guy as be a heel in your company is making sure that people hate him enough that they will pay money to see him get his butt kicked. And not just once, not just twice, but
Mhm.
for years. And that
Yeah.
was Ric Flair because no matter who he fought, didn't have to be. This is the thing. Yes, of course. You put Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes against one another, you're going to sell it. You put Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat together, you're going to sell out. But then you say, hey, I'm going to give a career tag team guy like Road Warrior Hawk. I am going to give a tag team guy who's way smaller than me, Ricky Morton, a shot at the world championship, and it would sell. I'm going to give a complete face painted unknown like Sting the opportunity to beat Ric Flair, and the guy sets records. Now, I'm not saying he did it all completely on his own. Obviously, every great heel has to have a great hero to go against. But what I'm saying is, if you look at all those names, they're all very different people. And yet the guy will sell out everywhere you go
Yeah.
because that was his job. And he did it better
Exactly.
than anybody else during that time.
100% he did.
Yeah.
Now,
Also, as a side, as a quick aside, for favorite heel Flair moment, I'm going to go with before she was yours, she was mine. Woo!
what an
The Miss
asshole.
Elizabeth
Yeah.
story, or that and beating up Angelo Poffo. I'm just gonna lump in everything with Randy Savage.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I love that feud so much.
Me too. So, getting to my 4B, the man I can't believe I fucking
Ric
forgot.
Flair doesn't share with anybody.
I mentioned before that your best heels are your smartest heels. The men who they use psychology. They beat you with their mind. You were already beaten. They beat you with their brain before they even got you on the mat. And I don't think there's anybody better at this than this man. I think he's the smartest wrestler in the history of the company of the business, in both a character standpoint and a real and a shoot standpoint. I think he was one of the smartest.
Very bold statement, Mike. You're really setting
I know,
yourself up here.
I know, I am, but I can't have a great heels list and not talk about this man. Trust me, Adam.
Okay. Um. Okay, convince me on this one. Because here's the thing. I
You
agree.
don't think that Jake Roberts belongs on a greatest heels list of all time?
I don't know. He did come into my head when I thought about it, but
What a slime ball.
yeah, but
What a ridiculous human being. Who could do the things that he would do just to get ahead?
I don't know.
You talked about Flair and Savage. Let's talk about Roberts and Savage. He ruined the man's wedding. Then he forced his poisonous snake to bite the man on the arm. laughing like a maniac.
Is a great angle. Like I'm not gonna argue with you that it's a great angle and a great storyline, but I just think when I think of Jake Roberts, I don't think of heels. I think of baby faces. I just feel like he was so much
He was a great
more
babyface, but I think his best work was done when he was heel. I really do.
okay. I think you and I are gonna be a little butt
Okay,
heads on this. I,
all
I
right.
think he's a great heel, but the greatest, like top seven, this is the first time I'm gonna put my foot down and say, like, I don't know if I agree with you on that one.
I'm not lying. Had I thought of this early, Edge may have been knocked off, and he would be my probably my four or my five.
I don't know, man. Like I said, like I'm gonna go. I'm a look. It's your list, but I'm saying I don't think he makes my list the top seven. And I'll say I think if you're putting him and Flair comparing them,
Mm-hmm.
I got to put Flair over him
Okay,
over Roberts.
I got you. I I
I'm
stick by
gonna
the
I'm
fact that
gonna
he
do
deserves
I'm gonna
to be
make the
talked about.
same I'm gonna make the same mistake Ultimate Warrior did, and I'm gonna trust you, Snake Man.
Well, since we started talking about smart wrestlers, it's only fitting we go on to my number three, because this man has been described as a cerebral assassin.
Okay.
I'm looking at your face, and you do not agree with me that Triple H deserves to be here, but Triple H is one of the greatest heels of all time.
He's a good heel.
He's a
He's a
great
really
heel.
he's a really good heel.
He is honestly one. Like, I do think he deserves this top three spot. I do think he's better than I think he surpassed Flair at this point. He he did way more worse things than Flair ever did. He was 10 times more violent than Flair ever was. He did things to people. He did not give a shit. He would he would murder his mother if he had to get that World Wrestling Federation championship. Everything revolved around that title for him. And he was so vindictive and such a slimeball. He would do anything to get what he wanted for
So
years.
yeah.
It was
So
I think I do believe that makes him one of the most despicable, just like horrible heels in the history of the business.
so counterpoint, if I
Mm-hmm.
may.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that he did all the right things per se in terms of performative acts of heeldom, but I also think that a lot of his heat was the wrong kind of heat. I also think that there was a segment of the audience hated Triple H, but not because he was a good heel or was good at getting them riled up. I think that they didn't like Triple H. A lot of the audience didn't like Triple H because he was shoved down their throats and they weren't entertained by him. They didn't want to see him get his ass kicked in a storyline perspective. They just wanted him to go away. And I don't, again, I'm not going to, sit there and say like, well, that's not his fault. Yeah, I get that. In a lot of cases, it's not his fault, but I don't know, man. To me, that is a big enough mark against the guy that I can't put him on a top seven list. But it's your list. It's not my list.
And everything that you just talked about, I guess, is why he's on my list, and maybe he wouldn't be on a lot of people's lists, because during those years when people didn't want to see him on TV, I wanted him on my TV every week. I wanted to see what bullshit he was going to pull the next week, and which face was going to finally get to him. It was captivating television for me.
That's
And
fair.
and when I say it was, we're not talking about just one section of years. This man was a great heel for 2 decades in
Yeah.
many different facets and many different types of heel. You had your I think his blue blood limit was great. His stuff he did with Mick Foley as the blue blood was phenomenal. He was doing some great
Yeah.
heel stuff there.
I'll agree that stuff was pretty good.
His
And
DX,
and for the right way.
his DX stuff made you want to just punch him in the fucking schnoz every goddamn week.
I don't know about necessarily that because I'll say this because I think you can agree with me on this. They were just as entertaining as they were heelish. I don't think
the
that there was ever a time that Triple H caused riots. Now, his partner, maybe.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. If you had said Shawn Michaels purely based on his DX run, honestly, I wouldn't fight you on it because
Sure.
Shawn Michaels had this natural charisma that made you want to hate him.
Yeah.
And like Michaels did cause riots.
Yeah.
Like Michaels would do things that would make people want to get up and fight him, right? I don't know if I ever
If
yeah.
Michael's amazing heel run was longer, we could be talking about him today. There's another man who I think had a phenomenal run, but it didn't last long enough, and that's why we're not talking. We'll talk about that in the honorable mentions. But the fact that Sean's really, really, really good heel stuff was only like what 97. You know what I mean?
I mean,
he could,
you could count his early years as a
his
heel.
early years was good, but it's
Yeah.
not this good,
No, I agree.
right?
I agree.
So Sean, for that reason alone, Sean doesn't make the
But it
list.
was really, really
It
good.
was really, really good.
All I'm saying is I don't.
See, Tyler, I'm not the only one who likes 97 DX.
Well, wait a minute. I'm saying I hated Shawn Michaels in '97 DX. You know, technically, I'm saying the opposite. But and that's another thing to question, right? This is a good part of the conversation. Is how much does quantity versus quality come into place here? Because as I said before, like I don't know that I would give you Triple H based on the quality of the run,
Yeah,
but at the same time, if the roles were reversed and you put Michaels on there, I would give you a pass and say, yeah, it wasn't for very long, but my God, did he ever cram in a lot of heat in that short period of time? So
sure,
it all depends, I guess, on what you value a little bit more. Okay, now before we go any further, Mike,
sure, yeah,
you started real strong. I was on board with you
yeah.
from 7 all the way to 4A.
I mean, you
And
say you
that,
were, but like every time I mentioned Dave, you're like, oh well, I wouldn't have said that guy,
well,
but
no, I there were
I
no, there were
think
guys,
out of
there
my
were
entire
guys.
list so far, the
Now hold
only
on.
person that you had written down was Ric Flair.
Right, but I'm not saying that discredits who you had mentioned. I'm just saying that those are guys that didn't immediately come to my mind. But I
Mm,
also followed that up by saying that you're absolutely right. They do deserve to be on that list. They're a great pick.
yeah.
Now 4B 3. Okay, you're not you don't have me quite as on board of that. This track's a little shaky at this point, Mike. So let's see.
I think we're about to go off the rails.
Okay, well let's see if we go off the rails or you can straighten the track out here and finish strong.
I don't know if we're straightening up the track because with my number two, if Tyler was here right now, I know for a fact he would accuse me of doing what I always do according to him and going with my heart rather than my head.
Okay. Well, I'm not Tyler, and I tend to lean a little
Because
bit more towards your
because the man I
that
consider
thought.
because the man I consider to be the second greatest heel of all time also happens to be my favorite wrestler of all time.
Okay.
We're
I'm
about
shocked.
we're about
I'm
to talk about
shocked.
Rowdy Piper.
I am amazed this is not your number one. Now you've
I
leave
I
me super
I
intrigued.
couldn't put him as my number one just because of
Okay.
the man who is my number one is number one.
Wow.
But
I'm
Roddy
surprised.
Piper, I don't know if there's anybody else in the world that would consider him to be number one or number two on their list. But to me, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, there was nobody more despicable, nobody more hated or just a bigger piece of shit than Roddy Piper. That man, he didn't even need to get in the ring. That was the thing. Like he already had you ready to rip your ticket up and demand your money back before he even got in the ring because he pissed you off so much. The man was already one of the greatest of all time with his mouth alone. And then the bell would ring. And you would see one of the greatest cheaters, one of the greatest chicken shits if he had to be, one of the greatest brawlers if he had to be. He would do anything to win a match. And he may have been a heel in real life because, as the story goes, he was rarely to never pinned. And I'm pretty sure that rubbed the boys the wrong way. So, yeah, in my mind, in my world, in my universe, Roddy Piper is my number two.
Yeah, flabbergasted, man. Jaw's still on the floor. Can't believe this isn't your number one. I'm really interested to see who is in the top spot. But obviously, I can't argue everything that you're saying here about Piper. My God. Um, the guy would incite riots. When we're talking about great heel moments, I personally have to talk about him playing La Cucaracha on the bagpipes to upset Chavo Guerrero Sr. and about a couple of thousand Latin American fans in the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles.
Man, see, this is what pisses me off. In 2025, you have Pat McAfee complaining that Canadians booed the national anthem. In the 1980s, you have Roddy Piper playing his version of the Mexican national anthem as the cucaracha. We are not the same.
No.
Okay.
100%.
Man, that man knew how to rile up a crowd no matter where he was.
The king of talking fans into the seats.
I am
without
taking
question.
advantage of the plethora of pay-per-views we have on Netflix right now, and I watched WrestleMania 6 the other day. Want to know a big problem? Want to know a big problem with WrestleMania 6 on Netflix?
I can think of one.
It's missing a match.
Oh, is it now?
It's missing a match. They completely edited out everything to do with Roddy Piper. He is not on that card at all. He does not exist. They Benoit that guy completely. But you know what? And listen, I'm not advocating at all for blackface. I don't agree with blackface. I don't. What?
I think the fact that you have to make that statement on this episode probably shows that you're right. This has gone off the rails completely.
I don't advocate for blackface.
The list has corrected itself, but this episode has now gone off the rails completely.
Blackface.
Okay. I'm not having this conversation with you on this podcast. You can wait till Tyler gets back to have this conversation. I'm not participating.
I'll guarantee you that.
Then maybe we just move on to number one. Something hopefully less controversial than the statement you just made.
Okay. Let's stop for a second. All you've really said was you're surprised that he was not my number one.
Yes.
What you didn't tell me was, do you agree with his placement? Do you think would he be your number one? Would he be somewhere else on your list?
I haven't given the list enough thought to really think about placements in great detail. What I would say is this: Piper would have made my top three. And if I'm just going to think of the greatest heels of all time, he is the absolute first name that comes into my head. So yeah, I think if you put me on the spot, gun to my head, I think I would put him at number one.
Okay. The man I chose as my number one, I want everybody, before you start calling me a cheater or that I misled you, I said no managers. This man's not a manager. Ever. He was never a manager. I said, I'm doing wrestlers only. And this man may not have been a full-time wrestler, but between 98 and like 2002 or whatever, he wrestled quite a bit. So he's still a wrestler. So it counts. And this man is the reason people tuned in every single week, twice a week to WWE to watch what the fuck was Stone Cold Steve Austin going to do to his boss, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Mr. McMahon is my number one biggest heel of all time.
Well, I mean, Rob is absolutely throwing his whatever he's listening on out the window. This is definitely cheating, without question.
I don't think so. I think Vince wrestled enough in that time period.
Here's the thing. List. Hold on.
There's a big difference between Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan.
Don't throw the trash in the ring just yet, okay? Here's the thing. You are cheating. You're a dirty, rotten cheater.
So.
You are. But I cannot think of a way to end a heel list more appropriately than by having one of the hosts pull out a pair of brass knuckles here and knock us out with this pick. Yes, as all great heels would tell you, from a certain perspective, you are in the right on this one. So I will let you have it, sir.
Can you, whether you agree with my cheating on the manager thing or not, can you at least agree with me? Do you agree with me that there's no bigger heel character, more disgusting human being. From a character standpoint, let's not go shoot. From
I
a character
mean, well, I
standpoint,
mean,
then
can we,
Vincent McMahon.
can it be both?
Yeah,
Um,
well,
yeah, yes, of course. I think it's incredibly
I think
foolish to
Vince's heel work.
deny that.
I don't know. I'm not taking anything away from Stone Cold at all. Okay, I think Stone Cold Steve Austin is. We're going to discuss this again in January. See where John Cena lands after retirement. But for now, as of March 2025, Stone Cold Steve Austin is still the greatest superstar in the history of WWE. And but I do think a lot of that has to do with his chemistry and rivalry with Vince McMahon. If you don't have Vince's complete piece of shit heel to go up against, I'm not sure Stone Cold rises to those levels. I think Vince did just as much for Stone Cold as Stone Cold did for the WWE. Is that fair to say, do you think?
I mean, look, every good hero needs a villain to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, where's the interest? Where's the intrigue? So, in the same way that Roddy Piper was the foil for Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon was the foil for Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely understandable from what you're saying there, and I agree with you.
And I do count that as the greatest story ever told in WWE.
It's up there.
Austin McMahon is my favorite story. The bloodline is inching up there. It's clawing its way to that spot, but right now it's still Austin McMahon. I don't think there's ever been a story told as captivating as that. As much as I shit on the Attitude Era on the show, I will say that the Attitude Era, as in general, is extremely overrated and not nearly as good as you remember it, people. It does have the greatest story ever told in it, and I think that's why we remember it so fondly.
Certainly one of the factors that
Yeah.
contributed to it without question. Um, okay, man. Like, I mean, pretty good list, I would say. Like, there was a couple there that
I'm
I'm gonna
yeah.
bop
I'm
you on the nose
excited.
for, but
I'm excited to see I'm excited to see some of your list items or honorable mentions.
there were a couple of names on here that I that came to mind. I know there's a little bit of recency biasy towards it, but honestly, I would not have been mad if Roman Reigns had showed up on your list.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about guys that were so good at being heels that people were paying to see them get beat, I think Roman Reigns has to be in the conversation because for the last, I don't know how many years, let's say 5 years since 2020, since he came back with Paul Heyman,
Yeah.
WWE fans were hoping that Reigns was going to get beat
But
for the right reasons.
Was it for the right reasons though?
Absolutely.
Do you think
Because
so?
because people wanted to see him lose his spot on top because he was such an annoying, arrogant, cocky jerk that people wanted to see him get knocked off his pedestal. And with every win, he just kept getting more arrogant and
Mm-hmm.
more full of himself. And you added Paul Heyman to the mix, and then you added the whole bloodline story into it, where you now had him convincing his family members to worship him. I think that guy is going to go down in history as one of the best heels ever.
I do not disagree with you. I think in 2025 it is too early to have that discussion, but I do think that at the end of the day, you can't be wrong. That discussion has to happen at one point.
Yeah, and clearly I disagree. I think that it is worth having that conversation now because I do think that he's a guy that people would I think that's why he was on top for so long. Because again, if we're comparing him to Flair, who we've already discussed as a guy that had longevity when it came to talking fans into the arenas to see him get beat, it didn't matter if he was facing guys like Braun Strowman or a guy like John Cena or a guy like Jey Uso, who
Yeah.
at the time was going into a Hell in a Cell match with them, right? But Jey was still was pretty much a tag team guy at that point.
Right.
But they still main evented and people were still paying to see Jey Uso beat him because they hated him.
Yeah.
Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, like no matter who they put this guy against, LA Knight, Logan Paul for crying out loud. They put him against Logan Paul in Saudi Arabia because even then they were like, look, I don't like Logan Paul, but I'll take him beating Roman Reigns even because everybody wanted to see him lose.
You sell a good point, man. You sell a very good point. I don't know where I would how I would alter my current list, but
let me ask you this question.
You're really selling him home for me.
Let me leave you with this question as a thought, a little thought experiment.
Sure.
Would Cody Rhodes finishing the story at WrestleMania meant as much if he had beaten anyone other than Roman Reigns?
It's a very hard thing to. The easy answer is no. But that's the universe.
There's a reason for
that's
that.
The universe we live in.
I'm just
saying. Can't argue with you because when I think of okay, well, who else could have been champion?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
It's hard because Cody could he have had a great storyline with anybody else? Yes.
Sure. But it wouldn't be as good.
But then when you ask me, well, who?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, you're not wrong.
So I think he needs to be considered in terms of the greatest. I think he's up there. I
like that.
I mean, we all talk about how much we hated Jeff Jarrett, but nobody ever wants to talk about how much we hated Jeff Jarrett.
Okay. I don't know if this is just like how good of a heel he is. I hate him so much I can't even write him down as a fucking honorable mention. That's how much I hate Jeff Jarrett. And I thought about him for my list. I really did. And then I said, maybe he should be my number one because I hate him so much I can't put him on my list. That's how much I hate Jeff Jarrett. But I don't know if I hate Jeff Jarrett for the proper reasons.
I get it. A lot of people made comparisons towards him and Triple H having that same kind of go away heat, and I get it. I don't think it was as bad for Jeff Jarrett as it was for Triple H, but I think I'm also in the minority of that. But I still think that guy knew and knows how to get heat, and he did it for so long.
If I was doing, and I believe I already did this list, I'm not sure. If there's a list of the greatest like heat seekers, Jarrett's on that list. Jarrett knew how to get heat. You really did.
Yeah,
you had guys like Chris Jericho who will now complain about the work he had to do with China and stuff. Jarrett groveled in it. Jarrett made it his own, and Jarrett got the proper heat from that storyline. I think that's what gives a guy like Jarrett the upper edge over somebody like Chris Jericho. You're given something that is difficult and hard to do. You're a heel. It's supposed to be fucking difficult. Make it your own. And he did. He made that work. Jericho didn't. And that there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, Jarrett would absolutely make my list for sure.
Okay.
Hollywood Hogan is on my list.
Guarantee he's my first honorable mention. I thought about him for the list. I really did. His run just wasn't long enough for me to go. If this was most impactful, if this was a heel turn list or most impactful heels or something like that, he's probably number one, number two. But it just because his heel run was only good from 96 to maybe 98,
Yeah. But again, I'm pushing quantity or quality over quantity here because like that guy got fans to throw garbage into the ring every night that he was out there, right?
All right. Well, in that case, if we're doing quality over quantity, I change everything. 97 Bret Hart is my number one. 97 Bret Hart is my number two. 97 Bret Hart is my number three. 97 Bret Hart is my list. He didn't make my list, but because he had such a short run with it. But 97 Bret Hart is the greatest heel of all time.
I am on the fence about 97 Bret Hart on this list because technically he was only a major heel in one country.
Right.
The rest of the world adored the man.
He didn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's like a big asterisk. If you're going to put him on the list.
The work he did in that short period of time in
tremendous.
That country
Tremendous.
is untouchable.
Absolutely.
Nobody in the history of time. There's only one man, and I'll get to him in a minute, that could even come close. But I don't think anybody will ever be able to touch what Brett did. That's how special that was. That was sometimes you get lightning in the bottle. In professional wrestling, it's not often. That was lightning in a bottle. You don't get to duplicate what Brett did in 97.
Again, I'll give it a pass as long as there's an asterisk. I'm fine with it. But there's got to be an asterisk.
Now, if we're talking about honorable mentions, I want to talk about a man who's doing the best heel work in the world right now. And he's the only man I think could come close to what Brett did. I don't think he could, but he could come close. And that's Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens, I think one day we're going to talk about, he's going to make this list in about 5, 6, 7 years.
I think people like him too much.
You think so? Well,
I do.
People like
I just think
too much too.
Well, that's again asterisks. Why I say asterisks? I thought you were going to say Logan Paul for a second, and I was going to say, well, I mean, it's pretty undeniable.
I don't think he's going to wrestle long enough to get into this conversation. But if he does, if he keeps where he's going right now, the man proved just a couple days ago he's fucking smart enough. I'm going to give him the credit rather than somebody told him to do it backstage. I'm going to give him the credit. But he saw how the Canadian audience reacted to the American national anthem. And he said, somebody give me a fucking flag.
Yeah, like, I mean.
Now, is it possible an agent said, hey, take that out? Sure, that's possible. But he made it work. He comes out. There's a reason they call him the most hated man in WWE. Nobody has the heat that Logan Paul has right now. If he keeps going like this, if he keeps wrestling for, let's say, another decade, he will be one of the greatest heels of all time. For sure.
No question about it. I want to take it really old school, and I want to talk about Gorgeous George. Like, I get it, way before our time, but the first real pro wrestling star of the television era, and he was a guy that did everything that he could to get people to come to the show, and how he did that was getting them to hate him.
Yeah.
He was the first real mega heel in pro wrestling, where just his flamboyance, he set an archetype that, many of the major stars, look, Ric Flair itself,
100%.
And the guy I'm going to also talk about next, Buddy Rogers. Yeah. I think Buddy Rogers is another guy that you have to talk about, at least in the conversation of best heels of all time.
I have Buddy Rogers written down in my honorable mentions. It's funny that I didn't write down Gorgeous George, just because you're 100% right. I can't believe I didn't write his name down, because a couple other names that I did write down, I don't know would be anywhere without that guy. I wrote down Adrian Street, and I wrote down Adrian Adonis. Guys who used that out there flamboyance to really get that heat. And they got heat. God damn it. Adrian Street especially. That man knew how to get heat.
Let me just also take this opportunity to say that, like, look, I know that there's probably, people out there that are saying that we're missing all kinds of wrestlers from Mexico, like the Paraguayas or the Villanos, or even in Japan, but we're not as familiar. So I don't feel comfortable listing anybody from those eras or from that time frame. But I just wanted to mention those two guys from our side of the country, or from North America, that or from the US and Canada at least, that I think got a little bit of that heat. Pioneers, heel pioneers, if you will, who paved the way for one other guy, the last guy on my list that I know that I want to put him out here because I know you'll appreciate him, which is Goldust. Yeah. Because when Goldust first appeared, and I say that first run between like late 1995 to late 1996 and even into 1997, man, that is a guy that could get people to hate him instantly. Now, a lot of it was playing off of some fears that I feel like maybe we've progressed a little bit since, but you could say the same thing about Gorgeous George back in the day. 100%. And Cheap Heat is still, Heat. And hey, you know what? Just came to my mind now. If we're going to be talking about the Cheap Heat, brother, I think Sheiky Baby.
He's on my honorable mentions.
You can make a case for Sheiky Baby, because I mean, again, using a tactic to base it on people's fears and stuff.
Sheiky / Slaughter written down here.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
Slaughter, yeah, had tons of heat,
The
but
fact
it
that
was
he
all it was
betrayed his
literally,
company and
but it was
or
for a cup of
betrayed his
coffee.
country, I should say. Yeah.
It was for a cup of coffee though. So like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put him on a best of list, but an honorable mention I'll give it to it just because, I mean they had to move WrestleMania because of how much heat the guy was getting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
know
for
what?
sure.
You are
No.
right. Vince McMahon is the biggest heel.
um, I want to talk about two names. One that neither of which could come close to the list right now. I want to talk about two future candidates for this list.
Okay.
One I consider to be one of the greatest heels going right now, and one I want to get your opinion on. I'm
Sure.
going to
Lay it on
start.
me.
I'm going to start with one of my favorite heels in the business for the last 3 years, and that's Dominic Mysterio.
Yeah.
I think Dominic is behind Kevin and tied with Logan as the greatest heels running right now. Dominic is so underappreciated. I think too many people look at him as a nepo baby, or people don't think he earned his way in, whatever bullshit. But nobody gets that kind of heat the way that he does, playing off his daddy Eddie Guerrero, you know, playing off the heat for his real dad. I love everything Dominic has done for the last 3 years. I think it's tremendous. And if he keeps going on this run, we're going to talk about him on a few different lists. A heel list, a, God knows there's no roof for Dominic right now. We could be talking about Dominic Mysterio in the same voice we talk about his father one day. I truly believe that. I think he could be an all-time great in 10, 15, 20 years.
He definitely has a ton of potential. I agree. He's definitely one to watch out for, but I also think sooner rather than later it's going to go the other way.
You
I
think
think people
you think they're turning him face before
No, I think the people will turn him face. I th-
okay, yeah.
I think that
Well, because
Dominic
he's
is
goddamn entertaining.
he is.
Yeah.
And I think eventually, and if you watch him in interviews and stuff outside of the ring, he's very charming.
He's
Like
so charming.
he's
He's
a very
charismatic.
charming
Yeah,
individual.
yeah,
And I think that sooner or later that's going to come through.
yeah.
And I think when people allow Dominic to be just himself more, I think that people, now that he's kind of paid his dues
Mm-hmm.
and earned his stripes, I think the fans will be more willing to accept him and cheer for him. So I'll say this. I think that once that happens, I don't think there will be any turning back for him.
The
That's my
last,
bold prediction.
all right. The last person I want to discuss on the show right now is a man that we've discussed a lot on the show. We've discussed him in a very positive light. We've discussed him in a very negative light. Sometimes we think he's going in the right direction, and sometimes we think he fucks it all up. I'd like to see your opinion on what are we going to be talking about in 10 years from now when it comes to MJF?
Good question. And I don't know because
Do you
MJF,
think he gets the right kind of heat? Or do you think he relies on cheap heat a little too much?
no. Um, does he rely on cheap heat too much for my taste? Yes. But I would argue that the greatest strength that MJF has is that he knows his audience
Mhm.
and he knows what the sickos, that's what they like to use. That's the term they're trying to get over, right? He knows what AEW fans will react to.
Yeah,
I think that if you put him in a different environment, he might behave a bit differently.
sure.
MJF is incredibly smart. He's
I can tell that.
very
Absolutely.
intelligent man. And I think he caters to the audience, which is what you need to do. So he knows if I say or do this thing, then this crowd is going to react to it. And that's going to make me more valuable in the long run.
Mhm.
And we've seen time and time again that the man is committed to his craft, has oftentimes refused to break character. Um, but he knows to give the people what they want. And sometimes what they want is somebody they can hate. And MJF knows how to make people hate him.
100%. Would MJF work in WWE?
Yes. I think, again, I think his strong suit is that he knows how to cater to the audience that he's faced with.
Yeah.
So,
So you
would
think
it,
he can
I
get
think,
over without the swear words and the
oh,
the
yeah.
throwing drinks on children and being a
Yes.
complete piece of shit? You think he can get over without that?
Yes. Yes. And I'll tell you why. Because whatever role or task he's given, MJF has proven he throws himself 100% into it and works hard. And there's no substitute for hard work. Absolutely none. But I think if you had him go to WWE and Triple H says, "This is what I need from you," MJF would make it his mission to be the best version of whatever that is that he can be.
Yeah.
And like, here's the thing, and this is why I think MJF is so good. Even though I don't watch AEW, I'm not an AEW guy, but I really like MJF because I think one of the things that that guy has done so well is he's tricked everybody, because everybody seems to think that he's like all these other guys, in the sense that he's a guy that comes in with ego and, oh, I won't do that. I got to do things my way, and I got to do it the way that I was born to do it, and blah, blah, blah. I don't personally believe that's the case at all. I look at a guy like MJF, and MJF is a guy that says, no, 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 I'm going to do what's best for the business. I'm going to do what's the best to put more butts in seats, because that elevates my stock and that makes me more valuable. That guy, I think, understands the business of the business, and he understands he has a role to play. That's why you don't hear him gripe and bitch about AEW, even when he hasn't been their top guy or whatever. He'll do it in a kayfabe sense. Yeah. He'll do it in a character wise to make us believe these things. Because again, even when he's outside of the ring, he's always a little bit in character, no matter what. He is brilliant at riding that line of, is this the real MJF?
Right.
Or is this the character MJF?
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So my opinion is that, yes, I think MJF gets over no matter what company he's in, because he's a hard worker and he understands the business. So yeah, I'm a fan of his, even though I'm not a fan of the company he works for. And I'm not saying I don't like AEW. It's just not for me. I'm not a sicko. I'm not a sicko.
Yeah. I was just going to say, hopefully one day, maybe he'll work for a company that I want to watch week to week, because I am not that guy, and we're not that show. Everybody knows Count Mike and Tyler. We don't come on here to talk shit about whatever. But we are honest. I don't watch AEW.
I don't like butterscotch ice cream, but you can have it all day long, man. But I ain't gonna tell you not to order. That's what I'm saying. But I'm not gonna tell you not to eat it. Yeah. Like, that's fine. It just leaves me more vanilla for me, baby.
Well, before we take it home, you and I are both very immersed in the world of indie wrestling.
Yes,
we love indie wrestling very, very much, and it's part of our lifestyle. So yes. before we close this out, I got to ask you, who are the greatest heels in indie wrestling?
Well, look, I mean, I'm a little biased, of course, but I think that I would have to list one, Darko. Anthony Darko, I think, is one of the greatest heels on the planet today, let alone indie wrestling. And I think it's a shame that guy doesn't have a contract. And then if we got to talk about guys that maybe have been to the dance but still know how to work that crowd, Tornado's got to be on that list. You know,
I've been watching Tornado for over 20 years, and he's still one of my favorites. Absolutely.
And as much as I loathe to admit it, I have to give credit to Asher Benjamin. There is nobody more hateable. There's nobody whose face that I want to punch more. There's nobody that I see get fans more riled up than that scarf wearing, wine sipping. Well, I know this is not necessarily a family show, but I'm still going to try to restrain myself a little bit here. That little, I'm not even going to say.
Hey, wait. Tyler's not here. I'm allowed to say the word. He's a cunt.
No. All right. Well, there, you said it. I didn't say it, but that's the kind of reaction that guy just pulls out of people. And I'd say that, if you want to see that kind of stuff on display, well, maybe I say you have an opportunity on March 29th in Bracebridge if you happen to be at Rock Solid Wrestling's Brace for Impact. So if you want to see the kind of visceral reaction that those three men, as well as many others on the Rock Solid Wrestling roster, cause, or maybe if you want to see the kind of excitement that guys like Scotty the Body or Tyler Turva elicit from the crowd, why don't you get yourself a ticket? They're on sale right now at rocksolidwrestling.ticket.ca, and that's ticket spelled TICKIT.ca. Floor seats are just $25. Bleacher seats are $20. They're on sale right now, or you can get them if you happen to be in town at the Muskoka General Store and Refillery in Bracebridge. We're going to have a great time that night. Jake O'Reilly, our Canadian heavyweight champion, another guy that tends to get fans a little riled up, will be defending his Canadian heavyweight championship. The Ring Truck Crew will be defending their Canadian tag team titles. Casey Spinelli will be on the show, as will Crystal Moon. We've got a great card yet to be announced, but if you tune in to our socials on Facebook, Instagram, and on X, you can check them all out at Real Rock Solid, or even visit our YouTube page and check that out there. There. Thank you, Mike, for that wonderful segue for me to shill all over the
well, I'm
the
gonna let you
episode.
shill some more because I have another question.
Yeah.
Let's say I don't live anywhere near Ontario.
Yeah.
Let's say we're one of our awesome listeners over in the UK or in China, thanks to Mad Dog Connor.
Or Germany. I've heard there's actually a contingent of Rock Solid Wrestling fans who follow us in Germany, which I think is really cool.
Anybody listening to this show all around the world wants to see more Rock Solid, but they can't make it all the way over here. How can they check out Rock Solid Wrestling?
Well, there's a really great way you can do that. And I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because for just $5 a month, only five measly Canadian $5, right? So depending on exchange rate, could be a really great deal. You can join the Rock Solid Fan Club at rocksolidfanclub.ca, where we have got all kinds of archive footage. For those of you who don't know, Rock Solid Wrestling has been in business for nearly 20 years, and we have just got a whole library full of matches and events and television series that have been taped and are ready to be put up there. So get in on the ground floor, $5 a month at rocksolidfanclub.ca, and you will get access to our series, some early access, behind the scenes stuff. We may be working on our own podcast this year. We'll see. Of course, if we do, we'll have you guys on, of course, and a lot more. So check it out now, rocksolidfanclub.ca. And if you want to get all that information about the shows, the merchandise, the fan club, everything, there's one stop for it, and that's rocksolidpro.ca. That's the official website for Rock Solid Wrestling.
Now, I want to thank you so much for being here, Adam. It's a special thing for me for you to be here, especially because I don't know if you realize this. This is the very last show of our 5th year as a podcast.
Congratulations for being 2 years better than me, at least.
Next year is our
and
5-year anniversary show. We start our 6th year next week, I should say. It's going to be a great show. Do not miss next week's show. On Thursday of next week, we're going to come at you with not one, but 2 amazing lists. We had to double it up. It's the 5-year. We got to come up with you 2 lists. We're going to be doing, Tyler will be doing the top 7 moments in Counted Out history. So
wow.
I'm excited to see what he
is my rant about Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler at SummerSlam 1993 on there.
You never know.
I really hope so.
We'll see what the top 7 moments in Counted Out history is. I hope he's working on it, because that's not going to be an overnight list, man.
No.
And then I'm going to come at you with a very special list. We're going to start a series. We're not going to do it every week. We're going to do it every few months, but this will be the first time we ever do it. We're going to start revisiting lists. We're going to go back 5 years in time, and we're going to take a look at the very first list ever, the very first show number 1, which was Greatest Factions of All Time.
Okay, so this is shows that made air that you're going to go back and look at.
Yes. Not the shows that he threatens to put out just to embarrass me.
One day, man.
So the very first show
ever
we did.
Hashtag release the shows.
The first show ever was Factions. We did the top 7 factions. I will be revisiting that list. We'll talk about it, what the list was 5 years ago. And then we're going to be making a new list by 2025 standards. However, we're not done yet.
There's more. Wait, there's more?
2 lists does a 5-year show not make? We have a special guest next week. We did announce it on social media, but if you haven't seen it yet, it's true. It's damn true. The one and only Olympic gold medalist himself, Kurt Angle, will be joining us right here on Count It Out for our 5-year anniversary. Without a doubt, our biggest guest. We can't wait to hear for you to hear the interview. It's already recorded. We had a great time with Kurt. He's such a good man, and we can't wait to share that with you on our 5-year anniversary.
Man, what a bombshell and what an incredible get for you guys. And let me be the first to congratulate you and pat you guys on the back and say, like, this is a long time coming for you guys. And I know how hard you've worked to get Kurt on the show, and the timing just worked out incredibly well.
Almost 5 years.
But I mean, it really just goes to show the amount of work that you guys have put in and the hustle, the dedication. So, man, congratulations.
Thank you,
I
man.
cannot wait to hear the interview. I'm sure it'll be great, as it always is with you guys. And I don't have a drink with me, but I'll raise an imaginary glass and say cheers to 5 more years and a lot more beers on Count It Out.
And I will take over. No, that's my job. I always do it. I'm doing my job this week. Adam did Tyler's job. I'm doing my job. I'm saying thank you so much. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, tell your mom about it, tell your dog about it, tell everybody about it. They want to hit those buttons now so they can get those notifications when the Kurt Angle interview drops next week. They want to be the first ones to hear that, I promise. And until that point, my friends, you have been counted out.
Cheers.
No. Oh, there it is.
It's time for the Rock Solid Wrestling Count It Out question. All right, it's Count It Out question backstage here with Jake O'Reilly, Canadian heavyweight champion, with John Atlas with Darko. Oh my goodness, Scotty the Body. Hey, with the Canadian tag team champions, the Ring Truck Crew. Who could rack up the highest bar tab after the show from the Rock Solid Wrestling roster?
That's an easy one. Jake O'Reilly and Darko, the Piss Beaters.
I have a feeling that one's going to be a very popular answer. All right, who is likely to rack up the biggest bar tab after the show from the locker room?
Wow.
Jake O'Reilly. Jake O'Reilly.
That or, Jake O'Reilly.
Who can bring up the biggest bar tab from Rock Solid Wrestling after the show?
Irish Jake O'Reilly. It's in the name, right?
The popular answer. Who can put up the biggest bar tab after the shows on the Rock Solid Wrestling roster?
Tim.
Good answer. Who can put up the biggest bar tab at the bars after Rock Solid Wrestling?
Me and Tid.
That's a fair answer. This has been the Rock Solid Wrestling Count It Out question. Count It Out with Mike and Tyler is proud to sponsor Rock Solid Wrestling Brace for Impact, Saturday, March the 29th from the Bracebridge and Muskoka Lakes Secondary School. Visit rocksolidpro.ca for details and ticket information.